Om Shanti. Today we're going to explore spinal extension and rotation. So for this one, I want to talk a little bit more about when we feel contraction in one part of the body, we're going to get expansion or stretching in another part of the body. The body has basically a network of muscles that are going to work together as a pair to support a type of movement. So very simply, if I look at my arm, if I contract my bicep, I'm going to get a stretch in my tricep. Vice versa, if the tricep is contracting, I'm getting a stretch in the bicep. So this works the same way everywhere in the body. The complexity of the muscles involved is going to be very different depending on what you're moving. But today, as we're working through spinal extension, we're going to be stretching the front side of the body. When we work on flexion, we're going to be stretching the back side of the body. For rotation, they kind of work in pairs. So if we rotate along one side, you'll get contraction and expansion at the same time, and then the other muscles will do the same thing. So there's a lot more pairs of muscles that are working together to control that sort of movement. So let's start to explore how that extension and rotation feels through different portions of the body. So come into any position that is comfortable for you. We're not going to stay in seated very long, so if you want to come into this as we focus on the neck, you can. With the spine nice and upright, we're going to lift the chin as far up towards the sky as we can, and then we'll bring it back to center. So here, clinically, we say we have about 63 degrees of motion if the cervical spine is super healthy and we don't have any strange protrusions or anything like that. Just notice how this movement feels. Notice the stretch that we get through the throat. Then coming back to a neutral position, we'll go through rotation. So looking over one side and over the other side. Here they say we have about 85 degrees range of motion on each side. So that's almost to the point where you should be able to basically bring the chin directly over the shoulder. And coming back through center. I recommend coming into a kneeling position for this next one. Or even you can sit on the heels or lift up. So we're going to be focused on the thoracic spine. So bringing a hand to the low stomach so that we're not bringing any movement through the lumbar. You can even bring the other hand to the back and try to lift the chest upwards as much as possible, and then bring it back through neutral position. So thoracic only has upwards of 22 degrees of motion, which means that we're not getting a lot of extension through the thoracic spine. The majority of our back extension is going to come from cervical and from the lumbar. But as we continue on to rotational movement, so trying to keep the lumbar still, we're going to bring ourselves in to rotation as we look over one shoulder. So here we have upwards of 47 degrees of twist side to side. Really try to feel that moving from like mid belly back up to the neck. I can certainly feel that tendency to want to turn the neck as I turn the chest to open up. So just observe, the other parts of the body that kind of get employed here. I like to think about the chest pressing back on one side and pulling forward on the opposite. One more time, back and forth. And then coming back through center. So we're going to try to play a little bit with lumbar extension. This is a little bit more challenging as you're not going to be getting into any super deep back bends. If I bring you into something like a camel, while yes, we can find extension through the lumbar spine, might be really challenging for you. So if camel is in your practice, you're comfortable with doing that, you can just kind of rotate or drop back a bit and then pull yourself forward. In this position, we're not trying to use the thoracic too much. You can also do this in a tabletop position. Here, you're going to have to use the thoracic a little bit. We're trying to press the tailbone up towards the sky and then come back to a neutral position. So here, lumbar only has around 31 degrees of extension as we work through those 5 vertebrae. Now, the reason that like cervical is going to have upwards of 63 is because we have 7 points that we can hinge on, whereas here we only have about 5 points to bring us into extension. So regardless of which way you're testing that out, come back into a kneeling position. And then we're going to focus on rotation. So rotation here, we actually only have 15 degrees of rotation through the lumbar spine. Lumbar spine is not really meant to rotate too much as it goes side to side. Here again, rotation wants to involve lots of points in the body. I feel this moving into the chest, so really focusing it in the low spine can be a little bit challenging. And notice I'm switching hands back and forth as I rotate just to help isolate a bit differently. Do whatever works for you just to kind of go through this playtime. Notice if this is traveling into the hips, so you're trying to press the hips to bring yourself into rotation, or are the hips able to stay square as you start to turn to one side. One more time, back and forth. And then come back through center. I'm going to drop into a tabletop position for our first structured movement today. So, like we started with for our first structured movement today, we're going to start in a tabletop position, noticing the weight of the body, the hands and the knees, this traveling up into the hip sockets and shoulder sockets. Just notice the weight of the body in a neutral spine here. Breathe deeply. And then we're going to focus primarily on our cow pose. So for cow pose, we drop the stomach down as far as we can as we lift the tailbone up. Open up the chest. I like to squeeze the shoulder blades together a bit behind the back as I lift the chin up towards the sky for full extension from tailbone to the crown of the head. And then we'll come into a gentle cat as a counter to it. Inhaling as you pull yourself into that cow pose, and exhale for a gentle cat. Inhale the cow, feel that activation from tailbone all the way through the neck, and cat pose. One more time. And one more time for cat. So here, come back to neutral. We're going to go through some spinal articulations. We're going to start in cat pose. And I want you to find the tailbone here and fight the urge to bring yourself immediately into that cow. I want you to pull the tailbone up towards the sky, work through one vertebra at a time, fighting to make your way from flexion into extension along the spine, feeling the shoulders roll back, and eventually the chin lifting towards the sky. You can relax as you make your way to cat. And then really intentional, feel the tailbone press up, make your way into extension. Feeling the spine arching back, getting all that engagement along the posterior chain of the body. Last time here, pull the tailbone up, arching the spine, lifting the chin, and relax back to neutral. Allow the movement to rebound in the body, just kind of experiencing whatever comes up, taking whatever movements you need to. You can even drop back to a child's pose for a little bit. And certainly during an extension practice, if we're not used to bringing ourselves into spinal extension, we might want to be a bit gentler with these movements or take frequent breaks, bring ourselves back into spinal flexion with some child's pose. So we're going to focus on rotation. This rotation movement is going to be mostly thoracic because that's where we have a big majority of that rotational movement. So let's bring a hand to the back of the head. Opposite hand becomes your support. Lift the elbow up towards the sky as much as you can. Open up the chest. Gaze can follow towards the elbow as you look up. And then tap the elbow to the ground. If you want to associate this with breathing, we inhale as we open up. We exhale as we tap down. Now this movement can start to build a little bit more speed, more quickly. As you open up, feeling that twisting, and then drop down as you twist a little bit in the opposite direction. Most things in a yoga class are going to have counter positions to postures that we do. So extension is going to want flexion as a counter. So a back bend is going to want a forward bend, whereas a spinal twist is just going to want a spinal twist to the opposite side. Last time to tap down. Inhale to extend up. And then release the hand back to the ground, switching over to the other side, hand on the back of the head. Inhale as you open up, looking up towards the elbow. And then exhale to tap down. Observe how the movement changed from side to side. Is one side easier or harder than the other? And can you feel those vertebra kind of ringing out as you come into these twists? Two more times as you inhale up. Last time to tap down. Inhale to expand up for a moment. And then release the hand back to the ground. Bring yourself into a neutral spine again. Just observe how the body feels. Then we're going to drop the hips back towards the heels for a child's pose, rounding the spine, bring the forehead to the mat. Take a deep breath here, expanding the low back. Reach the hands forward. Inhale, coming through a tabletop position. And we're going to drop the hips towards the ground and open the chest and chin towards the sky for a high cobra. And exhale right back to that child's pose. I don't like to hang out in this high cobra too much. It's just to kind of warm the back up and prepare the spine for some deeper extensions. So you move to your comfortable range of motion. As you're doing this, I want you to feel the glutes squeeze together a bit as the hips come forward. Feel the shoulder blades squeeze together a bit as you open the chest towards the sky. Back and forth, inhaling forward the whole time. As you inhale, you're bringing the body forward. And the whole time back, you're exhaling into child's pose. 2 more of these. Inhale forward, feel those glutes and shoulder blades squeeze to help get some posterior engagement, and then press back as you exhale. Last time. Inhale forward. Exhale back. Drop the hands back by the head. Relax the shoulders for a moment. Take a deep breath into the low back. Inhale as you come all the way onto your stomachs. Here we can bring the hands in front a little bit. Generally when we're on our stomach, I like to have big toes together, heels falling apart. There are a few exceptions to that, but for the most part, it's a good position to come into. So we're going to do some lifts here. So hands can come up off the ground. I want you to bring the elbows together behind the back, lifting chest and chin up off the ground, and then lower down. You'll inhale as you lift, and exhale down. Inhale, and exhale. It doesn't matter how big this movement is, just as long as you feel that effort along the spine. Probably, it's mostly going to be along the thoracic spine that you're getting that contraction. It's going to travel a little bit into the low back, but the glutes are not super engaged for this type of movement. 2 more times. Inhaling up, exhaling down. Inhale up. You can hold this for a moment if you can, maybe a full breath as you exhale. Inhale and release. Take a few breaths here. Just allow the spine to relax for a moment. So I like to bring the fingers into a diamond position. For our next pose is kind of a gentle sphinx posture. So elbows are out to the side a little bit, about diagonally from the shoulder. Forearms are on the ground, palms are flat. With big toes together, heels falling apart, we're relaxing the belly into the earth. Pressing the forearms into the ground. Try to lift the chest off the ground, but keep the belly on the ground here. And grabbing a hold of the ground with hands, forearms, and elbows, press them down. No movement in the forearms, but you're going to try to squeeze them towards the hips to pull the chest forward and bring the shoulder blades together a little bit behind the back as you lift the chin up. You might feel a little bit of engagement in the mid-spine as you come into this. Take some deep breaths. Just observe that engagement. And then exhale, release the tension. We're going to come into full Sphinx. So for full Sphinx posture, elbows are directly underneath the shoulders. So we should be 90 degrees in the elbows, or roughly 90 degrees. And make sure that they're not too far out to the sides here. I like palms flat, and if you were to look down, the forearms are making an 11. Really allow the belly to relax towards the mat. Yeah, the shoulder blades might come together to open the chest up a little bit. Sometimes this can be pretty intense for the low back, as we're really letting it relax as the belly sinks into the mat. And similarly to the gentle Sphinx, we're going to press the forearms down and pull the chest forward. So open up, almost like you're pulling the lumbar vertebra away from each other to focus this in the mid-back. To intensify a little bit more, you might begin to press the elbows more intensely down, lifting the chest up, continuing to release the belly towards the ground. We don't want the belly button to come up off the mat at all. Take some deep breaths here. You might feel the backs of the arms fire up a little bit in this posture if you're pulling the forearms back intensely. And exhale, release. Bring the head all the way to the ground. You may go pillow with the hands, rest a cheek, forehead, or chin. So for our next posture, we're going to come into snake. So for this one, I like to see interlaced hands with the palms pressing together. For some people, mobility is just not available for us to do that. We can grab a band and have this over the low back as we grab into that. Beyond that, all the mechanics are the same. So you're going to press the fists towards the heels, opening up the chest, and lift the chin forward a bit here. Press the hips into the ground, squeeze the legs together, and lift the legs up. Here you should get some glute engagement while you breathe deeply, opening up the posture. As we get deeper into snake, you might be able to lift the hands up higher to bring yourself deeper into the position. If you're with the band, you're grabbing a hold of the band, trying to pull the fists away from each other to intensify that back bend. Exhale, release. Compress back into child's pose. Rounding the spine. Take a breath here. Then we're going to come forward and do that one more time. Bring ourselves into that snake position. So stomach is on the ground. We're in the bind as we interlace the fingers, or grab a hold of the band. Try to open the upper body. You press the hands together, reaching them towards the heels. Press the hips into the ground, lift the legs off the ground. Take some deep breaths here. Try to squeeze the knees and ankles together. One more full breath. And exhale, release. Press back into child's pose again. Really feel the spine rounding here. And inhale into a tabletop position. We'll focus on some glute engagement. So some low back pain can sometimes come from glutes that are not firing up appropriately. So this is a good way to build a little bit of strength, but also prepare us for deeper lumbar extension as we get into deeper back bends. So bringing the leg off the ground, keep the knee at 90 degrees and try to keep the hips square to the ground. We're not trying to open the hip out to the side here like we're coming onto a fire hydrant. We're keeping the hips nice and square. I like to flex the foot and try to drive the heel up towards the sky, squeezing that glute, and then lower it back down a little bit to turn it off. You're inhaling, pressing that foot up towards the sky, getting a nice squeeze, and relaxing. To intensify this a little bit more, feel the belly button pulling towards the spine so you're engaging the front core a bit to stabilize this movement, and relax down. Do 2 more times on this side, squeeze up, and relax. 1 more. Squeeze. We'll hold here. Create that tension. Hold that tension. Deep breaths. Feel the front core engage while you squeeze the glute, trying to press the heel up towards the sky. And relax. Take a little moment to rebound and then move over to the other side. Try to keep the knee somewhere around 90 degrees. The foot is flexed. Drive the heel up towards the sky. Squeeze the glutes. And release. And active press. And release. Remember to engage the front core a little bit here. Active, and release, and press up to hold this time. Deep breaths. Feel the glute fire up. Feel the front core engaged, and relax. You can drop back to child's pose or take any movements that you need to. Just kind of release the spine a bit. And then we're going to come into a narrow lunge position. So bringing both knees at 90 degrees, moving back into the thoracic here. So both arms can reach forward for a moment. And then we're going to rotate, so if your right foot is forward, the left arm is going to go back, and you're going to look all the way to those fingertips while you do so. And then come back in through center, okay? So opening out and back in. Feel that tension through the rotation while you engage. This kind of happening from the pelvis almost all the way to that back shoulder. And then forward, we'll switch sides. Palms touching in front. Reach the hand back. As you open up through the twist, and then come back to center. to open. And exhale to close. Feel that tension from pelvis to shoulder. Last time. And back to center. I'm going to come into a seated position here. Feet flat. Bring ourselves into a reverse tabletop. So with the feet flat, the hands can be in whatever orientation is the most comfortable. You can bring the fingers to face forward, off to the side, or even back. I tend to like off to the side, although sometimes I will turn the fingers forward. You're going to press the feet into the ground, the hands into the ground. Lift the hips as high as you can. Feel the hips open up, the chest open up, and look straight up towards the sky. And then we'll drop the hips down, send the legs out in front, turn the fingers to the back of the mat, and fold forward, just kind of letting yourself release into that fold for a moment. And then we'll come back into that reverse tabletop. Planting the feet, inhale to lift up, open up, and exhale, hips down, fold forward as you turn the fingers to the back of the mat. Inhale to lift up. Try to feel that engagement as you squeeze the glutes and shoulder blades together. And exhale, hips down, fold forward. One more time. Inhale to lift up. Hold the position here. So you're going to exhale. Inhale, engage the glutes, shoulder blades a little bit more. Exhale, hips down, fold forward. In this position, just begin to look the neck right and left. You can move this into the shoulders, all the way down to the hips, even into the ankles, just kind of undulating the spine back and forth. And then coming back through center. So in this seated position, we're gonna bring the right foot over the left knee. We'll do interlace fingers around the shin. As we pull the hands into the shin, we're opening the chest, kind of bringing ourselves into a bit of spinal extension. Feel both sit bones firmly on the ground. And we're going to begin to reach the left hand around the knee. Bring the right hand immediately behind the hips, fingertips on the ground, and just look over the right shoulder as you come into the spinal twist. Try to feel the abdominal muscles engaging and supporting this posture. And then inhale as you unwind. We'll do a little counter twist to the other side. So I like to bring right arm against the knee, left hand behind, and just spiral open a bit here. And then come back through center and prepare for the other side. So left foot over right knee, interlace fingers around the shin, pressing the tailbone in, pull the chest forward, coming into a gentle spinal extension. Begin to wrap the right hand around the knee, using this as leverage to pull the knee in, left hand right behind the hips, looking over the left shoulder. Take some deep breaths here. Feel the core supporting this rotation. And then inhale to unwind. And take a gentle counter twist to the other side. And release. Bending both knees, heels on the ground, like hands together here, lean back slightly. Lengthen the spine as much as you can. Drop to one side and then to the other for some Russian twists. Feeling that those obliques work and the transverse abdominis supporting this rotation side to side. If you want to intensify, you can bring the heels off the ground. 3 more times, side to side. And relax. You can roll all the way onto your back, preparing for a bridge pose. So hands are flat, fingers reaching towards the heels a bit. You can even adjust if you need to. You don't need to move any deeper to bring yourself into this position. So we're going to start with some articulations of the spine, similarly to the cat-cow articulation. So I want you to find the tailbone, pull the pelvis up towards the sky, engage in the glutes as you lift one vertebra at a time off the mat, eventually lifting the chest towards the sky, coming into extension through the thoracic and lumbar spine. We'll go back down, starting from the cervical spine, placing one vertebra back on the mat at a time until the tailbone lands on the ground. Really try to focus on one at a time. Really inhale to lift. And the breath should be somewhat steady here. It's not a full inhalation the whole way up. You can make this super slow, really articulating through each of the vertebrae. Then slowly lowering down. And notice while we come into this extension, how much of the front core is engaged. One of the things that when we bring ourselves into extension that we want to make sure that we're doing is supporting with the front core so that we're engaged, we have some postural integrity through whatever movement, whatever posture we are doing. One more time, nice and slow, lifting from tailbone all the way up. And lowering down. Then we're going to lift up into our bridge. In a special way to get there, just pressing the feet and shoulders into the ground, lift the hips high. You're going to open the chest and hips as much as is comfortable. Breathe deeply here and try to equal the weight out between feet and shoulders, feeling the glutes and all along the spine active to bring you into this bridge position. One more full breath here. And slowly lower down. Hug the knees in towards the chest as you grab the shins with each hand. Allow this to soften for a moment before beginning to make some gentle sways side to side, where the elbows step around, using it to help you come back through center to give the low back a gentle massage. And then we'll come back through center for a moment. Bring the chin, the forehead toward the knees, curl into a tight ball. Release the head to the ground, the arms straight out to either side. Drop the knees to the right and the gaze to the left. Try to bring the knees as close up towards that right arm as you can. Make adjustments to be comfortable in the position. This is really a full release posture. Try to fill the torso with the breath, filling from armpit all the way to the hip as you inhale. And exhale to release tension. Take 2 more deep breaths before switching to the other side. Engage the core as you inhale to come through center. Keep the knees close to the chest, and then drop them to the left side as you look over to the right. Allow yourself to make any adjustments you need to in the posture. And begin to take some deep breaths, filling the torso with air. One more big breath. Engaging the core as you come back through center on the inhalation. And then release the feet flat to the ground. Arms can be on either side, or you can even rest the hands at the hip socket. Take some deep breaths here. Allow yourself to feel the weight of the legs and the feet and the hip sockets. Let go of tension in the hips and along the spine. Allowing the shoulder blades and arms to relax. Take a few breaths here in our final posture. Inhale, making your way into a seated position to close out class. And we'll close by chanting. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May we be blessed with radiant joy, peace, prosperity, and abundant health. Om Shanti.